say about life? You gotta get together, tell yourself a story, violate every law of the universe, just to get through the goddamn day. Certain linguistic anthropologists think that religion is a language virus that rewrites pathways in the brain, dulls critical thinking.
Change. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self.
This world is a failure. You are a stranger to yourself. And the face you wear is actual.
Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self.
And be queens and kings like the centuries past.
Knowledge, wisdom, understanding is the key to wealth.
Search for the knowledge, use science and math.
Knowledge, wisdom, understanding is the key to wealth.
And be queens and kings like the centuries past.
Knowledge, wisdom, understanding is the key to wealth.
Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self. Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self.
This world is a failure.
You are a stranger to yourself.
Peace. Welcome to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace, Jarul Allah.
Peace, Jakil Knowledge Allah.
And we would like to welcome you to another broadcast of the Knowledge Yourself radio show on the Born Day, which we call Master Allah Rules. So this is the month of March. Today's show is titled Muslim Sons. Excuse me. So we're going to talk briefly about the origin of Freemasonry and or Masonry as it's called in some circles, and further establish the fact that the math and sciences associated and practiced by Freemasons and our Masons actually originates from original people. So as we run it down, let's mention our sponsors today, Global Position Solutions, as well as Sage Studios. So today's objective is to demystify Freemasonry and further establish that it is the original man's science and math that was stolen since the mystery schools in Kemet. Let's begin with our quote. And this is spoken by Prince Hall. And it says, J. Husk, who just before the executioner gave the last stroke, said, I challenge you to meet me 100 years hence. But in the meantime, let us lay by our recreations and all superfluities so that we may have that to educate our rising generation, which was spent in those follies. Make you this beginning, and who knows but God may raise up some friend or body of friends, as he did in Philadelphia, to open a school for the blacks here, as that friendly city has done there. Again, Prince Hall. So my question is, because that's a really in-depth quote. Of course, there's a lot of allegory in that. Who knows what Prince Hall had in mind or what he may have been uttering to some of the other people in his fraternity. But for the most part, where is or what is the black man's role in terms of Freemasonry?
He's the father of it. Simply put. Simply put, you think we know and understand that the foundation of just about everything or everything in existence starts with us. So Freemasonry is no different. A lot of times people point to Egypt as the origin of Freemasonry, but you can find a lot of the same signs and symbols that were used and are still used in other, what some would consider primitive tribal culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But which we'll get more in depth in during the show. Church Ward, in his book The Arcana of Freemasonry, talks a lot about various tribes all over the world sharing the same signs and symbols and practicing a lot of the same, ways that Freemasons do in the present time. At that time, it was like the 1900s, but it's just basically recognizing that there's a global connection between all people, and you gotta always go back to the origin. And the further you go back, the more you'll be looking in the mirror.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Peace to that. That was it right there, really. Definitely, I would say Freemasonry would be the black man's role in that would simply just be to kind of bring him back to himself, help him to see and realize who and what he is, and just how far his reach goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for some people, that might be a useful tool, if understood and practiced correctly, how to get them back to that point, so they can understand who they are as a black man.
Hey, so one of the things that my brother had mentioned to me, it needs to be explicitly stated that we're 5%ers and we're not Freemasons or Masons. So we advocate that the black man is God. We're not under a study of any Masonic lodge or anything like that. But our studies always take us into the deeper sciences and mathematics and everything in existence that man or woman calls the science of life. So with that being said, one of the main things that you'll find in our curriculum is what's known as supreme mathematics, the supreme alphabets, and 120 lessons. Now, of course, there's always some controversy with any body of knowledge, but when we manifest that body of knowledge, it's also partnered to the fact that we live that out. Of course, if we study anything about the universe, we know that the order of the universe is mathematics as well as your physical composition. It's been tried and proved in science by people from all walks of life, colors, shades, genders, whatever you want to speak of. It's just something that you have to go and study. So what I would say, just being a 5%er and this being the Knowledge Yourself radio show, the fact that we're building on Freemasonry and Masonry, you can pick and choose the meaning and we'll explain a little bit about the different meanings. But for the most part, this is what we call reclaiming our legacy. All of the science and math that's practiced by Caucasians and Masonic lodges all around the world is really the black man. And that's what we're going to prove to you today in one of several series of this show. So with that being said, why don't we get into our cold and warm current events? I want to give it over to the guy, Jaquil. Peace, brother.
Peace. So, I've got a current event coming from HollywoodReporter.com, and it's actually dealing with our president.
Ooh.
In a good light.
Your compadre.
No comment. So, apparently, Obama is set to deliver a special introduction of Space-Time Odyssey by Carl Sagan. And so I guess the outside of the obviously the publicity that he needs because he's got such low ratings, apparently he has this love and zeal for science and technology, and he did have a thing at the White House to like a technology event where he invited a bunch of kids over or whatever, and they did technology stuff and learned about it. He also had the episode playing with Carl Sagan, so I guess he decided he needed to put his own special Obama-ness on it. Give it an introduction. I don't know how you guys see that.
Well, I think anytime a head of state advocates that students advance in science and technology, which would be my weak area because I'm a man of the letters, so to speak. But if anything, I can say that that's really inspirational. I mean, very few heads of state, at least in the media eye, appear to have the time or even the willingness to spend some time with young people to show them anything.
Yeah.
How you see it, God?
No, like I said, anytime, especially a black man, I generally look at it from the perspective of the youth. So if the highest, even if it's taken on face value, the highest position in the country, a black man in that seat is advocating science, that's definitely a positive look for the youth. You know what I mean? It'll be something that the youth will probably be more apt to deal with because, Obama's dealing with it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I definitely think it's, from that point of view, a great thing.
Right, yeah, exactly. He's using his position and power and image to actually have a positive effect. Right. So, you can't be mad at that.
Right. Thank you for that. Co-signing is always good, Mr. President. Definitely. My current event for today is, as you know, I teach at a high school in Watts, California. And of all people to show up on Thursday, Brother Tyrese Gibson. So I'm sure you've seen him in movies such as Baby Boy, Fast and Furious. I'm sure there's a whole list of them. And also, I remember when he was first
the Coca-Cola commercial.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Straight up. So, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, when we were all introduced to him. So few people know that he was an alumni of, Elaine Leroy Locke High School in 1996. So he came up there along with Taco Bell to award the school $25,000. And basically it's this pitch to, have students pledge to graduate. And although we weren't fully accepted or won the particular contest, he took it upon himself to come up with Taco Bell and actually donate some money. So aside from Taco Bell donating the money to our school, he donated $15,000 from his own savings or his earnings. Transformers, thank you. And he said that too. So one of the things I think that stands out in just this appearance by Tyrese is how genuine some people can be. He took the time to speak to our students for about 45 minutes. Wow. He talked a little bit about what he went through as a child, the fact that he grew up with parents who were both substance abusers. And he also took it upon himself to bring up my brothers Fred Lee and Jacoby, who are the campus security officers, but they actually were students when Tyrese was a student. And he brought them up to the front and he said, you know what, I want you guys to see these two brothers right here. He said, these are the people that I looked up to, and now here they are still working at the school. So I think it was a really good example of humility. You know what I mean? So I want to say peace to Tyrese and to all the students at Elaine Leroy Locke High School and everyone else who supported, just getting some funding sent to the school. Peace. I want to give it over to Jerome.
Yeah, peace. So, peace. This one comes from one of my favorite websites, Real Pharmacy. And the title is Huge Underwater Pyramid Found Near Portugal as Portuguese Navy Investigate. All right, so basically, Portuguese news reported the discovery of a very large underwater pyramid first discovered by Diocleciano Silva between the islands of São Miguel and Terceira in the Azores of Portugal. According to the claims, the structure is perfectly squared and oriented with the cardinal points. So I think, this connecting with what we're dealing with today as it relates to, Freemasonry is definitely a good current event. It's just interesting because, the more you hear people trying to pinpoint, Egypt as being this old or ancient cultures being this old, they keep finding artifacts that kind of put a wrench in I guess the original man's history. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think it's definitely interesting. They said that the pyramid.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it says the pyramid was found in an area of the Mid-Atlantic that has been underwater for about 20,000 years.
Whew.
Yeah,
Man,
yeah.
quite some time.
So considering this is around the time of the last ice age, where glaciation was melting from its peak 2,000 years prior, whatever civilization, human or not, here we go, human or not, that was around before the ice age could be responsible for building the pyramid. So, they always got to put that, they always got to sprinkle that spin on it, because they can't fathom the mind of the original man at that time to be able to create these things.
But they still can't really create it.
Exactly. One great movie though that people should definitely tune into, I think it's on our outline, is The Revelation of the Pyramid, where it basically talks about, where it has different archaeologists, not archaeologists, but architects go around to the various pyramids and structures all over the world, and basically use their expertise to try to figure out how these things were built. And definitely insightful, so check it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you for that, man.
yeah, I wanted to hit you guys with this one from telegraph.co.uk. And it's dealing with the all popular and all knowing, because you guys continue to give all the information to Facebook. And so basically what they're planning, literally like all your information. Like, I'm going to the club, or I'm going on vacation. I'll be gone for 2 weeks.
Right.
How did my house get robbed? Different current event. So Facebook is buying 1,100 drones to connect Africa and other parts of the world who are not online with internet. Exactly. Who's that make you go? Who's that singer? Yeah, Prince on the show.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So in any event, the solar company figured out a way to equip a drone plane with enough solar panels that it could stay up for 5 years. So apparently this is in response to, or in competition with, Google Loon, I think it's called, where they're going to
High speed internet.
Right, and so Google's going to plan to launch a whole bunch of balloons into the atmosphere and basically use different wind currents to kind of keep them in position, so they can, and that's going to form a network. And so, Facebook is planning the same thing. I think what I find interesting is, when did Facebook become so interested in providing internet access to people who didn't have it?
Right.
So you got to look at these two companies that are in play here. If you've ever seen a documentary called Terms and Conditions, it's actually dealing with when you install a program and it says here are the terms, and you have to scroll down. It's 20 pages long, and no one ever reads it, but they think, okay, yeah, whatever, I just want the damn program. Right? Click next. So there's a lot of privacy and stuff that you get up in there. It's interesting. These same people, like the owner of Facebook, what's his name, Mark Zuckerberg? Yeah. They actually tried to interview him on that documentary. That dude put glasses on, had the hat on, was like, get away from me, I don't have time, because he was being recorded. And he's like, look, man, if you turn off the cameras, I'll talk to you. So the dude had a little secret camera, but he's like, yeah, cool, no problem, we'll turn off the cameras. And so that dude got all personal. But, it's interesting. It's like, okay, you want everyone to give up their privacy, but you want to maintain your privacy. You know what I mean? So
That's ironic.
yeah, that was my perspective. My position on looking at it. It's like, this is just another way for them to, because they're talking about an area where people aren't posting on Facebook, giving away all the information, what they like, what they don't like, how they like it, when they like it, why they like it, right? All that information. So this is really another way to like data mine or, get information on the populace that you think you control. Wow.
Unbelievable. I mean, out of all the things and all the business that could be done in Africa, that would be kind of the bottom of the list.
Right. Let's give them food and water. Nah, they need internet.
And also, in some areas there are some palaces in Africa, no doubt about it. Some beautiful cities. There is an Africa that we're not shown.
Yeah.
However, there are some parts which are in dire need of just some of the basic necessities. Some of the things that
Like internet.
you generally don't see on the news. Exactly. Yeah, they need internet. Man.
But the other thing is, and I'll post the article. But when you go into it, it talks about how they hope to equip these drone planes, keyword drone plane, at least that was a keyword for me, right, with the ability to supply internet connection. But you're equipping drone planes, and then you're flying them over an area constantly, up to 5 years at a time. Drone planes,
yeah, for
right?
internet.
Yeah. The same ones that kill people currently right now. Those drone planes. They're not talking about picking off the guns and the missiles. They didn't say any of that. They're just saying that we're going to put solar power on them so they can stay up for 5 years, and then they're going to hopefully equip them with internet. Hopefully.
Right. Yeah, very
The drone planes. Yeah.
Very interesting. What's flying over skies probably right now. Thank you for that, brother. Peace. There's a news article that came out of ABC News. It's titled "Statue of Egypt, Pharaonic Princess Found in Luxor." We will mention Luxor, which was considered or is considered the Grand Lodge of Freemasonry. That's considered the heart of the sciences that are practiced today by all of the lodges on the planet. It says that Egypt has announced that a team of European archaeologists have found a nearly 2 meter to 6.5 feet tall alabaster statue of a pharaonic princess dating from approximately 1350 BC outside of the southern city of Luxor. It says that it is the daughter of Amenhotep III, and it says that it's the first found that depicts her without her siblings. So I think, considering the finding that you just mentioned and this finding, and this was actually published on March the 7th, it's really interesting how now all of these things are being discovered as the earth begins to shift and change. And archaeologists who still don't know that the original man built great civilizations, and matter of fact, built all or made all of the science and math that's being used today to oppress us, but at the same time to help us, comes from, the cradle of civilization, which some people call Africa, we call Asia. But for the most part, we love these breakthroughs and all these findings that people are making. But all it's doing is confirming what we're always telling you, that the black man and woman are the original people on the planet Earth. And we've contributed so many things since day one, if I can say that loosely. So more to come with all of the findings coming out of our great civilization. Anyone else have another current event?
I just came across one. I guess there's a beef going on between Lord Jamar and Marlon Wayne.
That you brought that up. Go ahead.
Go ahead and spit that.
But the basis of the beef is, Lord Jamar's, been adamant about I'm trying to choose my words wisely. Just the gay movement. There's been a real gay push, and he's just been a proponent that is against the propaganda of it all. You know what I mean? Listening to every interview that I've heard him build on, he's never really said that he was against homosexuals.
Right.
Do what they, basically do what you do in your home or whatever. But what he's against is how it's being promoted. Just like for us on our show, we're basically against how it's being promoted to the youth and things of that nature. And in the black community specifically. So I guess basically there's a picture of Omar Epps, which I haven't seen quite yet, but
yeah, I didn't quite. He was on The View, was it? In a dress. So basically, he had on like some jeans or something, but a dress over the jeans.
Yeah.
And that's I get
Omar
well,
Epps?
man. So that's what Lord Jamar was saying. He was like, "Yo, man, Omar Epps, like, come on, you're one of my favorite actors.
You
How
know?
could you be wearing a dress?" And then Marlon Wayne, I guess, he responded, and I haven't read all the tweets and stuff like that. But, yeah, honestly, I feel Lord Jamar, man. It's like, yo, man, Omar Epps, dude, how did you?
Right. Right. And again,
How
like,
did you?
and it's like, what about the youth, man?
Right.
Like, this is what they're coming up seeing.
Right. That's the norm.
Right.
And then you got to think of the progression, right? So if that's happening now. By the time they get old enough, it's going to be like, all right, well, don't put jeans on under under your dress. Like, that's old school. You just need to be rocking a dress.
Right. That's the direction.
What's that episode of Boondocks when is it Rowdy? He's wearing the I can't forget. They made up some gangster dude's name, but he's got the little. It's like a long dress that he wears and a little purse, and he was like, "Nah, this is the gangster something blue attire."
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that episode and link it, but you know what I mean. I think that was a great, I guess, view into the future or what's going on now is, as far as the fashion and the feminization of men. Wow. And it's not only in the clothing, but it's also in the foods and different things like that. You know what I mean?
I mean, if you're not from a culture where that's symbolic to your culture and men wear it, like like the Samoans or maybe the Fiji Islands or maybe Scotland. Other than that, man, that's not really founded in anything that I would say is right.
You know,
I mean,
Definitely
no
not.
other way. I can't dance around that one, man. When you go on public television, when you go into media, an image is projected of you to everyone who's watching. Of course, we all can make choices in life. However, don't come back later and advocate that you're, a ladies' man or whatever it is you want to project through your image. You know what I mean?
Right.
So maybe there was some shock value. Maybe he's trying to have some shock value so that he can maybe jumpstart his career.
Well, he has a new show.
Yeah,
there's a new show coming out with him.
But he's Omar.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You don't have to. That's the same thing as a Prince having to go, I don't know, sell a sex tape just so that he can get concert sales. That dude sells out the forum every time he comes to LA. He doesn't need to do anything outrageous. It's like, Omar Epps, man. You know what you're
Indeed. So, any other current events?
I've got one.
Thank you for that.
This is from TheVerge.com, and it's talking about how scientists can now control flies' brains with a laser. So they're able to. You already know where this is going, right? So they're able to emit a light which activates. How did they say? Yeah, it activates a certain heat-activated protein in the brain, and they can basically command it to do whatever they want it to do. So in this instance, in the article, they were able to encourage it to want to mate with anything in its immediate vicinity. So it ended up doing its mating dance around the ball of wax and attacking rats. And not only that, but the effects of the laser lasted up to like 15 to 20 minutes after they turned it off.
Wow.
Yeah, so you have to, and then in the article it says, I just messed up. What was it? In the article it talks about how such an experiment, this is a quote, such an experiment could eventually help us understand and perhaps even map the neuronal hierarchy that governs our own brains and decision-making process. In addition to making these flies feel just a little bit dizzy. Right? So, like we talked about on the show before, when they come up with these different technologies, they're trying them out on cats, rats, and dogs, or whatever it is they're trying it out on. The ultimate goal of those technologies is to be able to use them on people.
Right.
Right? So then it just becomes, to what extent are you trying to use it on people? Now you're talking about something that can so far at least manipulate sexual drive.
Right, and that basically sums it up. And that connects to what we were just building about. Like I said, it's, if you understand the push for homosexuality and the reason for it, as it relates to, as another means of controlling a population, it's not as shocking. You just have to understand the premise of why it's being implemented. And then if you could actually scientifically control someone's thinking to, go that route without actually having to use so much propaganda like they do on television, where at the end of the day, someone still has a choice. If you can take out the choosing part of the equation, you can be more effective.
Right, exactly. Sure. Yeah, and you mentioned a good thing in the propaganda, and I was thinking about the last article that I just brought up as far as connecting other people with internet, and then, light source right from the screen, which you built about on the show before, how it emits a certain alpha wave, right, that deadens your brain. So now if you lower the brain and cause it not to think as much, right, and then also at the same time you're able to project some type of light, which come, from an ad that you place on your thing or whatever way that you get that light, right? Even now, the light bulbs that you have in your house most likely aren't even real light bulbs like we used to have in the day. And you can tell because flies, insects, whatever, they'll go around those lights.
Right.
Right?
That's a really good point.
Exactly. So then it's artificial and it's not like the real thing. So the ability to modify a light source to make it do one thing but still seems like it serves the same function is definitely there. So
Wow. Right, that would be the equivalent of the bud zapper, which tricks them into thinking that it is a true light when really it's not. So like an electric current, so to speak.
Right.
Man, thank you for that. Any others to add on?
I can't even follow that one up.
All right, so hey, when we come back, we're going to get into the first segment of our show about Muslim sons. And, that's in our 120 lessons, so don't go running around saying anything other than that. Peace.
Neighborhoods are now hoods, 'cause nobody's neighbors, just animals surviving with that animal.
are now hoods, cause nobody's neighbors, just animals surviving with that animal behavior.
Baby, if they tried to understand me, what should I do? I had to feed my fucking family.
Neighborhoods are now hoods, cause nobody's neighbors, just animals surviving with that animal behavior.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace, rule Allah.
Peace. Jakil Knowledge Allah.
And we're going to resume our show about Muslim sons, and in this world they're known as the Freemasons or the Masons. So we're going to reestablish the fact that this show and one in several in a series is basically the 5%ers reclaiming our legacy, and we're advocating that everything that's studied in the Masonic lodges originates from one place, the cradle of civilization, what we call today Africa. But more than that, there may be some argument in some branches of the science that is deemed as practice in the Masonic lodges. So please keep that in mind. This is a really huge body of knowledge, and the fact that it's been practiced or is being practiced across cultures around the world, it consistently and continually morphs into other things. So we're going to begin with our definitions. So the first definition comes from Etymology Online. It's Freemason, and it originated in the 14th century. And originally it was a traveling guild of Masons with a secret code. The meaning then changed over to they began accepting honorary members and teaching them the secrets and lore. And this was documented in the 17th century. And it developed into the fraternity of free and accepted Masons. So the exact origin of the free is a subject of dispute. Some see a corruption of French, ferry, which means brother, from Frère Mason, which means brother Mason. Others say it was because the Masons worked on freestanding stones. Still others see them as free from the control of local guilds or lords. So those would be the people who generally can go and actually establish a lodge, and they're free from any sort of restriction on them, so to speak. Why don't we go into the second term? I'll pass it over to my brother Jerul.
Mason. This is 1200. What is that? AD.
Mm-hmm.
Stoneworker as a surname, early 12th century. From Old French, maçon, stonemason. Old North French, machoon, probably from Frankish makjo or some other Germanic source. In Old High German, stains meso, stonemason. Modern German, Steinmetz, pardon my German. Second element related to mahon, to make, see, make. Yeah, so basically that covers that.
Indeed. I got the third one. It's Masonic, and it's pertaining to Freemason, 1810, pertaining to stonemason, masonry, stonework from the Old French. The God was saying.
True indeed. Peace. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the origin of the mystery schools. And I do, before we get into this discussion, we do want to show you some of the books that we brought in for all of you to refer to. This is called the Dictionary of Freemasonry by Robert McCoy. And if you cross-reference him, he was first inducted into or initiated into the Lebanon Lodge. And if you go into doing a little bit of cross-referencing and research about him, he was a 33rd and 3rd degree Mason. And he has been credited with writing several publications about symbols in Masonry, and this is basically a dictionary of all the terms. Now, as a disclaimer, just keep in mind that even though we're showing you these references, that does not mean that everything has been tried and proven and can totally be considered true. And I'm going to share the first slide with you when we get into this that comes in this book. So for the most part, maybe a really good book of reference if you're studying any of the esoteric sciences, which is another fancy word for meanings in the abstract. We also brought Stolen Legacy. I mean, man, this is a jewel. We've used it on a previous show by George C. James. And actually, his whole thesis is showing and proving that what they call Freemasonry today, or Masonry, it all originates from one place, which is called Egypt in the modern world. The Holy Bible, which is full of symbols and allegory. And if you're going to study Freemasonry and Masonry, this would be a really good book to accompany that study. I brought in, not only because this is my favorite book, but I've shown this to you guys several times, From Slavery to Freedom by John Hope Franklin. Aside from the rich history that he shares about original people, there is some mention about self-help societies and the Masonic activities prior to the emancipation of the black man in the United States. Gives a really good piece of information there. What'd you bring, Lord?
Okay, yeah, so I brought the book that I speak highly about, Arcana of Freemasonry by Albert Church Ward. Very great book. Basically, he tackles all types of angles as it relates to, Freemasonry. He basically connects the mystery schools all over the world, from the Mayans to the Buddhists in China to Egypt to Europe, and shows that they all share the common culture, common signs and symbols, and common way of life, and those types of things. So definitely great from that standpoint. Also brought The Temple in Man, a great book by, pardon me, I'm probably going to butcher his name, but R.A. Schwaller de la Goutte.
The secret is just to say it fast.
That's
so
what
it
it
sounds
says.
like sure.
Either that or just pass it this way. Let him read it. But yeah, so this book's great because it shows the in-depth mentality of the Egyptians as it relates to how they, looked at things more symbolically and looked at the deeper meaning of things as opposed to just taking it on face value. It also talks about how they built a lot of their structures. As you can see on the cover, if you can see it, a lot of the structures that they built were built in a fashion that was in congruence to the physical body of man. So there's one hall, I think it's the Grand Hall of Luxor, or I can't remember the exact name. But basically, this was the hall that you went through as you went through the higher levels of the mysteries. Okay. So you would start out, say, at the feet, and then you would deal with a certain level of teaching at that degree. And if you were able to get past that level of teaching, now you could move on to, say, the knee. And all of these were in line with, like, your chakras in your body. And then the last level was the pineal gland region, which was considered the Holy of Holies. And that's where you were, basically enrolled in the highest form of the mysteries, which very few people got there. It would just be like your high priest. So,
You brought up that Kung Fu movie, what was it?
Master Killer or 36
Chambers.
Chambers.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's similar to that, and you can see that
to 36 chambers.
the Kung Fu would be an extension to me of the same exact thing that we're dealing with too.
Sure. you have to start at the bottom low level. Like, so for anyone who's done Shaolin Kung Fu, you would start with like the 10 forms. I forgot the name. They have a cool Southern Chinese name. Right, and then from there you get your you begin your forms at your lower set, and you get the middle set, and you get a higher set. And once you finish with that, then you get your extra special stuff. Right, so it'd be like the same kind of principle.
Right, like a video game.
Right. Wow, and that kind of reminds me. Maybe that's at least in my mind, the way it registered is symbolically when you were breaking down what the Grand Hall symbolizes. Kind of sounds like birth at the end of that. You know what I mean? So, kind of interesting. Kind of interesting. It is interesting. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the origin of the mystery schools. And again, we're going to have several series to follow up because, again, this is a really huge body of knowledge. So, first thing I wanted to state is the lie that we found in our research. And it's interesting how texts, they contradict themselves because people are trying to conceal the secret. For those of you who are 5%ers, that's in Born Degree 1 through 40. One of the things on page 33, which comes out of McCoy's book, when he breaks down the general history of Freemasonry, he has a list from A to, let's just say Z in this case, of when all of the Freemasonry lodges were established around the world. And I think that's the most enlightening and helpful thing about this is that he does list just the extent of Freemasonry. I mean, from Chile to Africa, Australia, so forth and so on. So the first lie, it says that Freemasonry was introduced into Africa about the year 1736. I want you to marinate on that for me, because that's what we did. And is now well known in the European colonies along the coast. The charters for holding lodges emanated from England, France, and the Netherlands. At Monrovia, in the Negro state of Liberia, there are lodges of colored Masons not recognized by the whites, but working under a grand lodge of their own. Now, in saying that, if you flip back, oh yeah, I'm gonna try to go in. He goes into, you look at page 8, it says that, and this is a contradiction. Remember, he said Mason lodges in Africa were founded in the 1700s. He says here, quote, "The Egyptians in the time of Moses were proficient in all the arts and sciences." This is bullshit. As the gigantic works constructed in those early ages still existing prove. Their language was mystical, and their priests secured the mysteries of their religion from the knowledge of the vulgar or uninitiated by symbols and hieroglyphics, comprehensible alone to those of their order. The fraternity of ancient Egypt was denominated the Hierolatomi, or sacred builders. They were a selected caste and connected with the government and priesthood, being in fact Masons of the priestly order. But I thought Masons
was introduced in the 1700s.
Right, but Egypt's not a part of Africa, right?
Oh, that's
Really?
why it makes sense.
Egypt is a part of Africa?
No, it's not.
It's not, right?
It's totally separate. It's that one place over there. You gotta get the new updated map.
So, as we go on, I could just say, this is the second paragraph on page 8. Moses was initiated into the secrets and mysteries of the priestly order when in Egypt, and some have imagined that the Hebrews assisted in the construction of the pyramids, but in all probability, these wondrous efforts of Masonic skill were hoary with age when the children of Israel settled in the land of Goshen, and were emblems of sublime truths to a civilized nation when Abraham was a wanderer in the wilderness. By Egyptian colonists, according to our biblical chronology, the arts were carried to Greece 2 or 3 centuries before the age of Moses. That was a hell of a long time before the 1700s.
A little bit.
just a little bit. So let's consider this maybe an oversight. So why don't we address this? What was the origin of Masonry?
Well, from Church Ward's point of view, Church Ward was actually a Mason for a while. He wrote a lot of different books in regards to Freemasonry. But from his point of view, and from my research, there was a group in Egypt known as the Turanians. And Turanian in Egypt, I guess, means
The Turanian?
Turanian, Turanians, close.
Close.
Yeah, so basically they were called companions, which companion is basically like a brother, right? So it said that this group was in Egypt and only knew the secrets of the 2 degrees out of the 7 primary mysteries. So it said that there was like 14 levels in the mystery system. Some would say maybe even more than that, but they were only allowed to get to the 2nd degree. And the first 2 degrees dealt with more of the construction of building. Okay. And they were like responsible for going around the world and building a lot of the structures that we see still standing today. So yeah, if we trace the old Turanians operatives back to Egypt, we find them well established at the commencement of the stellar cult. It is possible to trace them further back than this, even to the early totemic sociology. In Africa, at the present day, there exists some of the Neolithic Negroes, descendants of those who first formed the nomes in Egypt. Those who formed the 17th nome are now the El Gununo. These tribes still at the present time are mostly formed into a secret brotherhood, and by some are called the blacksmiths. Horus Behemoth, the first worker in metals, is their chief or head deity. Old word TC, this is thus a substituted word. The chief priest is called Ol Abon, and they still have many of the primary signs and symbols which we use, which by we he's talking about Freemasonry. So yeah, I find that interesting.
It is interesting. I'm hoping I'm not cutting your wisdom.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
One of the things that I would really like us to just address here is, why is it that our sciences have been hijacked and practiced, yet no credit has been given to our people? I wanted to pass that over to Jakil. Like, what would Europeans, how would they benefit from taking our math and science, in this case, and using it for their own purposes? How do you think they benefit from that?
Well, I think these sciences, it's kind of within itself a neutral thing, right? So within the hands of someone who's righteous, it can be used as a great building tool to build a great nation, both physically, as far as buildings, and then mentally, as far as people and the minds of those people who are going to inhabit that nation. At the same time, if you have that knowledge and you're not such a righteous person, you can use that same knowledge to build something great for yourself and have those people serve you. You know what I mean? Because knowledge is definitely power. And so what the one that we're always quoting, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge.
Right.
And so you can totally see how if you have knowledge of something that you can use for your own benefit to make you better, and you don't give that to someone, they're going to always be in a state where they have to serve you. Because they don't have, now you're not giving them equality. Right? So everyone's got enough knowledge, there's knowledge for them. So you gotta, without sharing that equality, people allows you to be in places where you're at a higher position. Right? And so what happened, like the God would say, we're going to take you way back, right? 6,000 years ago when people came down from the cave, right? And so if you were to come across bits or pieces of this power and then destroy whatever remnants of it was there, then you would ultimately be the one who would be in a position of superiority
Mhm.
to a certain degree.
Well stated. Well stated. Now, there was something that came out in what you mentioned, God, about the blacksmiths. And so, one of the things that I think, that came out of our studies is this whole essence of Greek mythology. So, it's been well stated that the Greek gods were crafted from the Egyptian gods and their whole, what we're going to refer to as theosophy, which is the understanding of theology as well as philosophy. Okay, but there's a specific study. So, in just saying what you said about the blacksmiths, it reminded me of a Greek god by the name of Hephaestus. Hephaestus can be seen depicted in a wheelchair because he was disabled, and when he was born, his mother found him to be extremely ugly, so she threw him down to the earth, and that led to him losing the ability to walk. And here's the point. Hephaestus was known as the blacksmith among the Greek gods. He was the one that was skilled in crafting several different, I don't know, not weapons, but, okay, let's just say weapons, tools that the gods use, you know what I mean? So it's very interesting that you brought that up. So that's really what this show is about, and I know that's what came out in our study is there are so many different symbols to explain stuff, that I've had experience teaching but didn't see it then for two reasons. I wasn't on the Knowledge of Self radio show, and I did not have the knowledge of myself, which is, in the form of Supreme Mathematics, Supreme Alphabets, 120 lessons.
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand that Egypt isn't the only place that this knowledge was. It existed prior to that. It's just years and years of study in Egypt. Tended to be one of the places where it culminated in a sense, right? So. What you were speaking about is right exactly as it relates to 6,000 years ago, people coming down, Caucasian people coming down from, Caucasus Mountains with barely anything, and then they go into these places where they, have huge structures built, they're studying high sciences and things of that nature. And from my research, a lot of the high priests wouldn't accept Caucasians into the practice for the longest time because they knew about their nature.
Right.
You know what I mean? So some would say that is what propelled Caucasians to trying to take it. Others would say the biggest issue was when I can't remember what pharaoh allowed the Greeks to run the Egyptian army.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of the end there. So,
but I was going to say that definitely sounds. I don't want to say human nature, but definitely maybe westernized human nature. I mean, when someone. For one thing, you got to think you come down from a place that the God said that doesn't have anything, and you see all this great stuff. At least my first thing would be like, holy shit, I want that. Right? How do I get that? How did you make that? I want to know how to make that.
Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Right. Exactly. So then you got to think, how much more would you want something when someone tells you you can't have it? And you're like, oh, well, that must be really badass. If I can, right? If I'm asking for it, and they give me this little piece, but they won't give me that, then that must be the real thing. And now I really want to get that. So you got to think, people coming from an atmosphere where they don't have that same culture, right? So it's nothing to lie, steal, cheat, kill, whatever, to get the things that you want. So I could see how a little bit of planning, and we're controlling the army, and now's a good time to.
And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that Caucasians migrated into one of our civilizations. So if you do the knowledge on the haikus, and I will refer you to Kwesi, where he breaks down the invasion of the haikus during the 18th dynasty in Egypt. And, of course, all of that is depicted in the hieroglyphics. And you have to understand that when people invade a country, they also take its artifacts, takes control of its government, places people who are actually superior to them in a subservient sort of position. So to go back to what our discussion is about, where all this originated from, the Masonry and everything that's being practiced in these fraternities. On page 151 of this version of Stolen Legacy by George C. James, his argument is that the Grand Lodge of Luxor is where all of the things that are being practiced now, that was considered to be the heart of Masonry. Of course, there can always be some argument because as time goes on, more information comes out. But I'll just present this to you just so that you'll have a basis. You know what I mean? So I'm going to read this just so you know we're not making this up. It says here, the ruins of the ancient Grand Lodge of Luxor are found today on the banks of the Nile in Upper Egypt in the ancient city of Thebes. It was built by Pharaoh Amenhotep III. It was the only Grand Lodge of the ancient world. It had branches or minor lodges throughout the ancient world, in Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, South America, and probably in Australia. These were some of the places: Palestine at Mount Carmel, Syria at Mount Hermon in Lebanon, Babylon, Media near the Red Sea, India on the banks of the Ganges, Burma, Athens, Rome, Croton, Rhodes, Delphi, Miletus, Cyprus, Corinth, Crete, Central and South America, especially Peru, among the American Indians and among the Mayas. Let me say that one more time for our wives. Among the American Indians and among the Mayas, Aztecs, and Incas of Mexico. And he gives you a reference. Read Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics by J.A.S., that's James Hastings. Lives of Eminent Philosophers by Diogenes Laertius, and History of Philosophy by Thomas Stanley. Discovery of the ruins of Luxor on the banks of the Nile and the organization of the Egyptian mysteries into a grand lodge with minor lodges throughout the ancient world are evidence that Egypt was the cradle of the mysteries and of the Masonic Brotherhood. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's important to, like I said, a great movie is The Pyramid Code because it talks about the relationship between the pyramids and the connection between them all over the world and what they felt, these researchers felt that they were being utilized for. But basically, the mentality of the Egyptians, they saw how during different ages, people's mentality would change. And they were trying to effectively keep their mentality at its highest peak by using the natural energy that was in the atmosphere through the pyramid. Like I said, Pyramid Code goes much more in depth as it relates to the science of that.
Which I think is, you told me about that, it was on Netflix.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. Yeah, I don't know if it still is, but it was. But yeah, so I think what's interesting is that, when the original man has a science, he's striving to use it in a manner to uplift the mentality of his people.
Can you repeat that, please?
When the original man has a science, he's striving to use it to uplift the mentality of his people.
That goes to original people as well.
Yeah.
You know how it is when we get knowledge, we try to use it to overpower others. You know what I mean? And then it's not helpful. It's useless then.
Yeah. So I think the difference is, and this is probably why a lot of the ancients were hesitant to teach Caucasian, is because they knew that nature was to do the opposite of that. You know what I mean? And they were more destructive in nature, so they were hesitant to teach a lot of them initially. But over time, a lot of them were allowed, like the Pythagoras and the other so-called great Greek philosophers. They were obviously taught by, or taught within the mystery schools in Egypt. But yeah,
25 to 50 years, right?
Exactly.
So now, one of the things that I think we're all well versed in, and you can look at any piece of information out there. The Greek intrusion into the Nile civilization, how did that sort of undermine what was going on in the mystery schools during the time that he invaded the area? What were some of the things that ended up happening, when the Greeks invaded the Nile civilization?
Well, they basically gutted, our science. So they went in and strived to study as much as they could of what they weren't allowed to study before. But you got to understand that you're not going to be able to cram that amount of information in a short time.
Right.
And then they took a lot of books and translated the books into their own language.
So you missed some stuff in translation.
Right, you missed some things in translation.
Mm-hmm.
So this, for me, that's how a lot of these religions were derived, because people lack total understanding of the symbolism
Right.
and the origin of a lot of what they were, stealing information from. So they couldn't really expound deeply on it like it was meant to be. So it just became what it is as far as just belief.
Yeah.
Belief
Right.
system.
No, exactly. It's kind of like I was trying to think of that kung fu flick, but anyway, there's this one movie where they find this manual, right? And then only the dude who has the right understanding can really unlock the secrets to the manual.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really matter who has the manual. You might pick up one or two nice moves, right? Like, oh, okay, I never seen that spinning backflip kick or something. Like, oh, that was cool, right? But you didn't get the whole part of that spinning back kick, back kick move, which was the backhand chop or something that came behind the kick, which allowed you to really perform the move to its maximum efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and so I say that to say, a lot of times with the original people, you see that we teach a lot of things in allegory and symbols. And so, like I was saying, if you're taking these symbols and no one's ever given you the key to unlock what that symbol really is, then you can only really take it so far. And you can see that in a lot of scientists. Sometimes you see them figure out a lot of things, and then when they get to something they don't quite know, they chop it up to God, right? And
Right.
You know what I mean? They're like, okay, well, that must be because of God, and blah, 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 because they don't have the understanding to really push forward and get the key or the understanding to what that thing is. Yeah, so, and then you got to put in, the whole translation.
Yeah, I want to read something that really shows the way of thinking as it relates to how the Egyptians and a lot of ancients in the mystery schools basically looked at things. And this quote comes from Temple and Man. It says that ancient Egypt accords the entire value this cause, and not the object has emanated from it. When the ancients draw a figure, it is not the figure that they look at, but what they are projecting of themselves onto this figure. Physically, they view this figure as a shadow, a silhouette against the light of its absence. They detect its contours. So the way I see that is simply like when you draw something or you write something, it's not necessarily what you draw, but what's projected from what you draw.
Yeah.
Exactly. And how that relates to you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's the greatest thing about the ancients is that they wouldn't just build stuff to build it. They'd build it mathematically correct, but they would build it based on maybe something dealing with their physical body, their composition, and it would all be interconnected to just about every component of their way of life.
Right. Indeed. When I was younger, I used to think, only child, that's I got imagination. I would look at the freeways and the streets, and I'd be like, the freeways are like veins, right? The big major things that you go through, and then the streets could be like venules, right? Where we're talking smaller, like venules and arteries, the smaller parts of the body that things flow through. And I took that a little step farther. I was like, it seems like people or man only builds things in which that they can relate to, or they have some experience in, right? So no one's going to ever build something that's foreign to them, to themselves.
Right.
Right? If you can't build a spaceship and not be someone who's in that industry, in that space, right? That's foreign to you. You can only build something that's innate within you. So I think that kind of what the guy's trying to say is that original people always built things to express themselves and the truths that were within them, so that it could be seen by someone else to kind of reflect the light of what that person was trying to say, in that truth.
Right. And I mean, just to co-sign on what you just said, Jakil, I know in The Science of Self by Dr. Supreme Understanding, CBS The Life of Law, and other contributors such as Robert Bailey, what's mentioned is the fact that, man and woman have consistently built things according to this specific code of building. Like everything that we've built, there's a pattern to it, and it's reflected in the universe, and it's reflected in the body, so it's reflected in the infrastructure. And, just like the God just proved from the temple in man, it's as simple as taking that understanding to a modern understanding about freeways to where we bring it together. And this is what we do when we study 120 lessons, and we study a variety of texts. We always look for the symbolic meaning in everything that we read and translate and interpret it into life in general. Otherwise, it's just like reading English literature. I mean, you're not going to get the theme or the lesson.
Yeah, one other part that's interesting, it says, when they draw a geometrical figure, it is not the figure which interests them, but the inexorable law that prescribes it and the inevitable consequences that this law provokes. Thus, geometry takes on the same living characteristics of life as the images they carve or draw. So you can see how mathematics or the geometry that they applied wasn't just like we're taught in school, just numbers, but these numbers connect to your actual existence and how you move and those type of things.
You had a meaning to it, in mathematics.
On one of the shows in this series, we are going to talk about how much of what we're just introducing to you, because we're just laying the groundwork, for other topics within this series about Freemasonry. But we're going to tell you a little bit about how it translates into, your holy books, your prophets, and everything else of that nature. So, just as a sneak peek, we decided to share this with you again. George C. James. He made honorable mention on page 152 about two people that were said to have been initiated in the Grand Lodge Luxor. So it says that we know that Moses became an Egyptian priest, a hierogrammat, which is a person responsible for writing sacred texts, and that Christ, after attending the lodge at Mount Carmel, and remember Mount Carmel is said to be in Palestine, went to Egypt for final initiation, which took place in the Great Pyramid of Cheops. That's spelled Cheops. Other religious leaders obtained their preparation from lodges most convenient to them. There is no mystery.
Right. And the mystery comes when you see individuals who are enrolled in such high sciences, and you have never witnessed anyone who has been enrolled in such high sciences. Things that they do and the way that they speak is almost like a miracle to you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you think about it from that perspective, the so-called miracles of Jesus, if he did exist, you know how I feel on that. But, you could see how the interpretation of a person who doesn't really have that type of knowledge can see them as such a profound person because they're doing things that they couldn't even fathom doing themselves.
Right. No, for real. I mean, you can look at something like taking electricity to a place that's never seen it before. And like, wow, you are the master of light.
Right.
And they're like, but no, it's really easy. Okay, never mind. So you have to hit it with all the science that goes behind it.
Right.
Like
And that's
people-
if,
for
and-
lack of knowledge.
right. And that's if you're righteous. And if you could say, wow, I could utilize this to really
Right.
control this group.
Right.
That's on the other end.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, and you know, it's interesting. I can co-sign on what you just said, Jaquil, because a really interesting study, because this is the Knowledge of Self radio show. It all connects in some way. Check out that documentary about conflict diamonds. You know, you have Tigo Calderon and Raekwon. I'm not going to mention the title because none of them have hit us up to to ask us to do that, but I'll tell you this much: in that documentary, the people dealing with just kind of the effect and the aftermath of what happened in Sierra Leone and Liberia with diamonds, they take some finished diamonds and they show the diamond miners, and the diamond miners were just blown away by how the diamonds look. Many of them never see a finished diamond.
Wow.
When they pull diamonds out of the earth, they look like black rocks.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's really interesting that you said that.
Yeah.
True indeed.
Yeah, I just want to add on. This comes from Melchizedek and the Mystery of Fire from Manly P. Hall. Great book, short, quick read, so definitely check it out. This kind of sums up the difference between, say, the ancient mentality versus more of a religious mentality.
Okay.
This comes from page 26. And he says, basically, if Christianity were looked upon less as a church and more as a mystery school, the modern world would rapidly gain a clearer understanding of its tenets. Every priest of Christendom, every minister of the gospel should be an anatomist and a physiologist, a biologist and a chemist, a physician and an astronomer, a mathematician and a musician, and above all, a philosopher. By philosopher, we mean one who could study intelligently all of these different lines of thought and discover the interrelationship existing between them, and use all the arts and sciences as methods by which to interpret the magnificent, emblematic pageant and mystery drama of Christian faith.
That's funny. As you were reading that, I was thinking, so I do martial arts. One of the martial arts that I do, Kali, or you call it Kai Kali, this was stick fighting. And one of my students at the time, he was like, "Yo, I'm going to teach you how to play drums." And I was like, "Play drums?" I was like, "Dude, I am not the musical guy." He was like, "No, you just don't get it." He goes, "You're doing music. The beats that you're hitting on, 1, 2, 3." He goes, "Okay, that's music. And in between the 1 and 2, there's these beats. That's the half beat that you attack with the knife on." And I was like, "Oh." And he was like, "All right, look, sit down and play this beat." He gave me like a simple beat. And he goes, "Okay, in the middle of this beat," he goes, "add a knife." So 1 and I was able to sit down and play a beat. I was like, "Holy shit, this is easy." And he was like, "Nah, it's because you're already doing it. You just haven't translated it to
The
another
connection,
thing."
yeah.
So I can definitely see what you're talking about as far as if you really understand something, you'll see the interconnectedness in it and something else because it's all really
Right.
the same kind of
Same
principle.
thing. Right.
Huh?
Yeah. And that's what Supreme Mathematics has definitely done for me. It's
Right.
given me the ability to connect everything that I do.
Right.
And then that allows me to really improve because when I get to something that would be considered new, it's not really new. It's the same application. You know what I
There's
mean?
nothing new under the sun.
Right. That's deep. So why don't we go ahead and take a brief break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the origin of the secret. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace to Allah.
Peace.
And for our last segment, the origin of the secret, we just kind of want to break down the whole idea behind the secrecy in Freemasonry as it is today. And actually, if you read several sources from the root, there was a reason why our ancestors kept what they were doing in secret. One of the first things that I can say about that is because the people who were seeking the knowledge were actually classified as foreigners. So when you're referring to foreigners, you're talking about Europeans. And since these people were not of that particular civilization, it was very important that anyone who was educated, any of these foreigners who were educated, that they be reminded of maintaining a secrecy, okay, which is why we have the basis of philosophy coming out of Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and that'll be for some other show. But for the most part, they basically interpreted the information that they learned in the mystery schools or that were passed on to them by their mentors and turned it into their own philosophy, so to speak. Name many of the things that you're hearing today after them, but in actuality, they're teaching you what they learned in the mystery schools. So I know you wanted to add on to that. What's all the secrecy about?
Yeah, when you think about it, from my research, if you go into ancient civilizations, they recognize what we consider the 5% to 10% and 85%. They recognize that the majority of the population wasn't going to be able to vibrate at that level of knowledge that the small collective group of the 5% would be able to. So that being said, instead of trying to force these teachings on them, they looked at it like, how can we present this information in a manner that will help them live righteously and it be a positive thing for the collective, for the whole civilization as a whole. So they might not give them they might not give them the whole enchilada, so to speak, but they'll give them just enough so that they can still practice their way of life, without harming themselves. Also,
I was going to say, at that point, too, that's when things can kind of become religious, per se, right? When people kind of drift away from those tenets or those rules that they were given, right? And then they try to keep those things, but since they're not in connection with it, they drift and they make rules. The thing that you do on Sunday.
Right, and that's what I think that's the origin of religion, is because they recognized that they couldn't teach this high science because there was a certain regimen that you had to go through to get it.
Right.
Like, for example,
can't everyone be a Shaolin monk?
Right.
To sit in a horse stand for a half hour,
exactly.
An hour, whatever.
Exactly.
Everyone's down with that.
Right. There's a certain trial that you had to go through before you were even allowed in this mystery school. There was some people who weren't allowed to speak for 5 years.
Wow.
No words for 5 years. If you were able to do that, now you could come in.
I know some people I want to put the mystery school.
You know what I mean? So,
hell out, 5 years.
So from that standpoint, the secret came out of, making people work for it. Right. And I think that's important because when you work for something, you have more respect for it.
Sure.
Now, I think when you look at it from more of a European point of view, the origin of secret for them, I think, initially started in the midst of the Roman Catholic Church and their persecution of anybody who dealt with anything that was against the tenets of the Roman Catholic Church.
Right.
So a lot of Freemasons were burned at the stake and things of that nature. Yeah. So they had to kind of go more into secrecy and adopt some of the Christian, language and things of that nature to make it seem like they were Christian in thought. You know what I mean?
You're 100% right, God. I forgot the dude's name, who makes the famous, all the Masons out there know what I'm talking about, but he makes the famous, I guess, curse you can call it, when he's on the stand about to get hung, right? He says, okay, actually, I lied. I just had to say those things because they were beating me and torturing me. Masonry is not a witchcraft, instrument thing, it's a good thing. And then he goes on to say, I guess to like the king or someone else that you guys will meet me at the judgment seat or something before God. Both of those dudes died within a year, which was in conclusion with this time. But then at that point, what was going on, like I was saying, there was persecution from the Pope and the Catholic Church, right? So you can openly be a Mason meant that you had a death wish, literally. So that's what was going to happen to you. Yeah. So at that point, you gotta stand a certain way and do certain codes, right? So that we know what we're talking about, but so that they don't know what we're talking about and I don't get killed. Right. Yeah. I think that's definitely the point of ways you can see Masonry become the secret that is known now.
And again, just to co-sign what we're presenting to you, if you look on page 21 of McCoy's book, Dictionary of Freemasonry, he talks a little bit about this whole idea of when the Masons in Rome wound up going underground. Again, as it was stated by my brothers, it was to avoid religious persecution under the Pope and all of the people who were involved in persecuting people who advocated anything aside from the Catholic religion. The Roman Catholic religion. So it says here on page 21, under the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, irritated at the progress made by this new doctrine and determined to destroy it by force, ordered during this year fresh persecutions against the Christians, in consequence of which many of them resided in Gaul, took refuge with the corporations in Britain, where greater protection was afforded them than elsewhere. The Christian Masons at Rome sought in the catacombs a secret asylum from the edicts fulminated against them and an escape from the tortures to which they were condemned. In these dark vaults, they met with their co-religionists. During the 10 years of persecution under Marcus Aurelius, they transformed the catacombs into churches ornamented with sarcophagi, that comes from Egypt, and encaustic paintings. Their faith inspired these Christian artists to build chapels and altars on the tombs of the martyrs. So that's how we bring it to you full circle. This is just one of several instances in history, and I'm specifically referring to European Freemasons and Masons and Masonic lodges where the people who were practicing this ancient science, math, just the science of everything in life, and were persecuted for doing that in Europe. So it's a really interesting take on everything, and that's why there has to be several more shows about this coming from us.
Go ahead. And I want to add on as far as that, I think that's what you were going to get to, dealing with the other part of the secrecy is they don't want you to know where they got it from, right? Because we're talking about the same place that invented what we all now call whitewashing, right? It's taking statues, because back then they had statues of what they deemed to be gods that were black, who were actually black men. You go look that up, right? And so they took these statues, and they're doing it in the pyramids too, where they're taking pictures that were black, of black men, black women, and they're lightening them up as they so-called do the upkeep on them, right? And so in Greek, they do the same, not upkeep, but they would whitewash the statues to make them look whiter. And over time, you have these curly white statues of gods that are really black gods. So that's the kind of keep it secret, or at least that's how I see it, is keeping the secret from the origin of where it was at, right? Because if you were to go there and see black gods as what they're worshiping, you'd be like, well, who are they? Right? What did they do? Where did they come from? And they would have to give you that information, pointing to another place.
Right. And, definitely we'll refer you to Hidden Colors too, which will give you a really good take on what the God is saying. We're not reference machines when we speak. We like this to be fluid, but if you stick with us, we're going to give you all the tools, but of course we always encourage you to do your own research. As far as the secrecy, something we wanted to add on, because again, we'll be going a little bit deeper, a lot deeper on all of these things. But we know that there are, original men and women who are a part of Masonic lodges or fraternal orders, whatever term you want to use. But they're still using the same science and math that we're referring to. One of the reasons for the secrecy for so-called Black Americans in the United States was the fact that prior to the Civil War, the fact that our people were physically enslaved by the white men in the United States. It was important for us to band together and take care of, our own needs as people in America. So John Hope Franklin gave a really interesting piece where he was talking about what the so-called free Negroes were doing in the North during enslavement. So it says here, free Negroes held their fraternal organizations and benevolent societies in high esteem. The Masons continued to flourish during the generation immediately preceding the Civil War. In Maryland, for example, they had grown to the point by 1845 where it became desirable to form the first colored Grand Lodge, and 2 years later another was set up. In 1843, under the leadership of Peter Ogden, a group of free Negroes organized the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows, which became one of the major Negro fraternal organizations. So one of the things he goes on to say is that, thus a large number of benevolent societies sprang into existence, some of which were secret. In Baltimore, there was one as early as 1821, composed of young free Negro men, and by 1835, there were 35, the Friendship Benevolent Society for Social Relief, the Star of the East Association, and the Daughters of Jerusalem. He goes so on and on and on. But the whole point was that our people knew the danger, that was imminent if they were outwardly doing something, first of all, that was helping Black people who were enslaved, but more importantly, that was undermining Christendom, which was, commonplace in the United States.
Right, and then think about it from our perspective, knowing that what we know now. When we speak with people, some of the stuff that we present, they look at us like we're crazy. Mm-hmm. So if we were to go around and really speak what we know to everyone, right. I mean, we even do it to some degree. We may not completely reveal, the contents of our knowledge to everybody because, like I said, it's going to make them look at you like, whoa, you know what I mean? So you just give them a little bit, you know what I mean? But the difference between us and Freemason is that there's a certain, like you can find anything out about us that you want. Yeah. You could do a Google search to do that. Mm-hmm. Not saying that you can't do it with Freemasonry, but they're more obscure in their teaching. You know what I mean?
Right. It's a lot of writs and rights.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things when I just kind of scanned the 42 Books of Hermes, which was mentioned by George C. James, that was like one of the how shall I say, staple foods in studying Masonry in the Grand Lodge at Luxor. Alchemy, which now today is known as chemistry, was one of the things studied. And, of course, astronomy, but as connects to what the guy said, magic. So, there's a lot of ritualistic type of things going on in Masonic lodges, whether they be Black or white. And here's a really interesting person that you may want to look into. Listen, just have an open mind when you look into him. There's a man by the name of Aleister Crowley who was actually credited with delving into the occult. There's a lot going on with that whole background. There's a documentary about him. There's an actual movie about him. It's really weird, but for the most part, it kind of personifies the whole idea of the rituals that take place among some Freemasons and Masons. And, we're not into magic. We're into reality.
And like I spoke about earlier, I think on the outside looking in, people look at it like magic because they don't understand the actual symbol of what it is they're doing. And, you know, and you won't be able to understand that unless you're in the order and they basically take you through it to get that understanding. So, like I said, anytime you look at things from the outside in that you're not understanding is when your mind either tries to understand it or puts it off as something else. Or that's magic, or that's devil worship, or that's this, or that's that. You know what I mean? So I think that's how that derives, you know, that mentality.
And then, I mean, I think a big part of it too is, you know, when you look at it, the persecution of the Masons was led by the church, right? And so you brought up a good point as far as people. Well, you know, let me take a step back. So one of the things about the church was, one, they weren't even letting their own people read the damn book, right? That's number one. So you got to think about the overall, you know, not to say that people weren't smart, right? But the overall intelligence level of someone who's not reading something, right? You're definitely limited in your understanding and how broad your mind is, or the things that you're aware to, right? So then you got to put in the fact that, okay, Catholic Church is going to tell you all these things. They're going to use propaganda, right? Much like the CIA is doing now, on record to you currently. Anyway, right? So they're gonna use different images, pictures, slogans to try to paint those people to be a certain way, so that when someone does meet someone who's going to, they're already going to have a certain perception of who and what that person is and what they do and what they deal with. Right? It could be the same way if I tell you, you know, people who do Tai Chi from the devil. And there's no way that you could really root yourself in the ground and be that strong unless you're using some kind of demonic power. Right? And I just brain fed that to you over and over and over. So when you meet a Tai Chi guy, he's like, you can't push me over. And you're like, of course I can, because you're using demonic power. And he's like, but no, I've been training for 10, 15 years, and I've learned how to make my stance really strong and connect my body. You're like, no.
Takes the science out of it.
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of people miss, you know, the basics. Like, not necessarily the basics, but like the God said, both my brothers were saying, is you had to be able to understand a large amount of information. Science, astrology, physiology, chemistry, all these different E's, right? And then be able to connect those things together and see how one is connected to the other and how to use all those things. So to not have that information, or to not even know that information exists, then everything is magical to you. You know, like you do a simple demonstration. The first time you saw a volcano explode with baking soda and what is it, vinegar or something, right? You're like, oh, holy moly, look, that's magic. How crazy is that? Until you took a basic science class and you were like, oh, this causes this reaction, and it causes it to fizz up a bubble, and it looks like it's a volcano.
And I'm glad you said that, because I know in you know, hundreds of years ago in the United States, if you were discovered doing alchemy, you were classified as a witch. Alchemy today is known as chemistry. You know, astronomy is in ancient science, and all it is just helping people understand the significance, among other things, of the calendar, the human body, the elements,
where they fit in with the universe.
True indeed. One of the things I think that should be mentioned, since we are about to close, is what has happened since, let's say, the Renaissance, where people were credited with knowing so many different things. You know, they were musicians, they were architects, they were artists, kind of similar to what was taught in ancient times out of the mystery schools. The fact that you were exposed to all these different arts and sciences and everything dealing with civilization. So we can just bring it to today, where we are now teaching people do one major, declare one major. So now we're in this time where, quite possibly, I mean, aside from the secret lodges, but we're not being geared to study different things in order to gain a greater understanding of ourselves. That's one of the things that comes out in the reading about the teachings that came out of the mystery schools. One in particular man know thyself. So I know I wanted to just pass along to you.
No,
know
I
you had
mean,
something to add on.
Yeah, I mean that you definitely hit the nail on the head. It's like when you become a specialist in only one thing, then that's when prejudice comes in.
Oh yeah.
Because now you
has to.
you're a specialist and no one can tell you anything about that thing for one, and then anything outside of that thing doesn't matter. It's just the thing. You know what I mean? So I think if you look at what Manly P said, it relates to that quote where the high priest should be one who is enrolled in everything and a specialist at everything. Then bias and all those isms, the racism and sexism and you name it, all go out the window because his understanding of everything will be more complete.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think one of the things, and maybe we'll cover it a little bit more in depth on another show, is how it's the opposite of what's happening now, right? Right now, you go to school, as God said, you got to specialize in the field. So even if you look at a doctor, right, you have he's a general doctor, then he can specialize, like, he can be a brain doctor, and then you can be a brain doctor, you can specialize within there. So it's like they're trying to just narrow you down to one thing versus, you being the master of all things, right? Or studying the science of everything in life. Back in the day, a lot of people point to Kemet or Egypt as being a place where there's Timbuktu, and there was, you got to remember Egypt was founded by Ethiopia, right? So there were places in Ethiopia where you go to study, much like take Hungar, Kung Fu system, for example, right, which is a close to mid-range fighting art. A lot of them were to go do Troy Light Foot, which is a long-range fighting art, right? So you could see even then to where they're like, okay, well, once you become proficient in this, you need to also go on this to make this other thing work better. And now go on this to make this other thing work better. Now go add this, right? And so you get pieces of it so you can put it together and kind of formulate it for yourself.
And that's kind of like Bruce Lee, right?
Yeah, right. Take different pieces, and they all have to follow a certain rule or universal principle, right? And then within that, you build it and construct it the way that works for you as a person, right? Versus just saying, okay, I'm just gonna learn how to be really good with my hands, and I'm never gonna have to kick anyone. Yeah, right. Well, right. Until you get kicked in the head, you're like, well, damn, I should have learned how to to deal with kicks, right? So it's definitely back then, or at least how original people generally deal with things, is being able to master multiple things and use them all together versus separate. And you can really see that in the science of the cross. Right? If you look at it, it's dealing with division, separation. Right? It's not an equal sign, right? And it's not a plus sign. You're looking at separation. So, indeed.
So on that note, why don't we go into the read, view, and do? I want to have the guy, Drew, you can hit us with the read.
There's a lot of stuff we named today. Like I said, the Arcana of the Freemasonry, A History of the Masonic Signs and Symbols by Albert Churchward. Definitely check that out. Manly P. Hall's book, Melchizedek in the Mystery of Fire. Great book, very easy to understand. He breaks it down real well. And The Temple and Man by, I'll let the Englishman say it.
Oh man, you said it right. Lovitz. What are we gonna view?
For the view, we've got Pyramid Code, which should be available on Netflix. Zeitgeist, which you can YouTube Zeitgeist, and The Revelation of the Pyramid. Which when you find that one, let me know.
And,
that's on YouTube.
That's on YouTube too.
That's on YouTube.
There you go.
What you should do is keep an open mind. I mean, the guys who testified, I didn't even want to do a show about Freemasonry because all of the occultish things and references and, a lot of the hype and sensationalism surrounding it. But I can't say and thank my brothers enough that, they always encourage me, hey man, keep an open mind. Just look into certain things. Use your Supreme Mathematics, Supreme Alphabets 120, and you can see through certain things, and you can learn from just about anyone. Well, you can. You can learn from anyone and anything. So just keep an open mind. That's one of the main things that we can advocate you do. I would like to thank my brothers for putting this show together. It's always a pleasure to be here with them. Sage Studios, GPS. And I want to give it over to the guy, Jaquil, for the last word.
Yes, sir. Not Self Radio. You don't have to go to college. You use knowledge.
Peace.
Peace.